Jacob meets Rachel and marries Leah. What? Why? I am Ronald. Welcome to Bible Talk. Today I'm continuing in the book of Genesis, chapters 28 and 29. First, something to point out from chapter 27, verse 20. When Jacob brought his dad savory food and his father asked him how he got it so fast, did you notice Jacob's response? In the second part of verse 20, he says, "Because the Lord your God brought it to me." Your God, not our God or my God. He says, because the Lord your God brought it to me. Interesting. In chapter 28, we see Jacob traveled eastward toward the ancestral land of his grandfather, Abraham, Genesis 11, and his mother, Rebekah, Genesis 24. And verse 28:11 says, Jacob came to a certain place and he spent the night there. And he had a significant dream in this desolate wilderness and used a stone as a pillar. He dreamed a ladder was set upon the earth, and its top reached the heavens, and there were angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The Lord God then gives him the blessing that he had given to his father and grandfather Abraham. Now, in Jacob's dream, there was now access to heaven. Jacob now knew that God was closer than he had ever thought, and that there was a real sense of access, or an interaction between heaven and earth. Now, in the New Testament, Jesus made it clear in John 1:51 that he is the access to heaven. He is the means by which heaven comes down to us, and by which we can go to heaven. Jesus the Messiah is the ladder, and he said to him, most assuredly I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. John 1:51. Jesus is the way to heaven. He does not show us a way. He is the way. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 14:6. Then verse 13 to 15, God speaks to Jacob. Now Jacob had no doubt heard about the great God who appeared to Abraham and to Isaac, but now this same God met Jacob in a personal way. This was a life-changing experience for Jacob. These words were of comfort and hope to Jacob at this critical crossroads in his life. Essentially, God repeated to Jacob the terms of the covenant that he gave to both Abraham in Genesis 12 and to Isaac in Genesis 26. Now, before Isaac told Jacob the covenant was his, Genesis 28, but now the voice of God himself confirmed it. God promised to him a land, a nation, and that his descendants would be as the dust of the earth. There will be a blessing in you and in your seed. All the families of the earth shall be blessed. God gave Jacob the same kind of promise found in Philippians 1:6. Being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. God won't let us go until his work is complete in us. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I can come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will surely give you a tenth. If God will be with me. If God will be with me. Yeah, that's what he said. This can also be translated, since God will be with me. But knowing Jacob, he undoubtedly meant it in the sense of, if God will be with me. God gave him a promise, and yet he still tried to bargain with God, even promising God money if he fulfilled his promise, tithing. Now, as Jacob came near to the home of his mother's family, he noticed a well that was used to water the sheep. The well was covered and protected by a large stone. Now, in an age before clearly marked roads and signs or GPS, Jacob didn't know where he was until he asked some of the local people, and Jacob then discovered that he was at his destination. Jacob knew to contact his uncle Laban, his mother's brother. The shepherds knew Laban and told Jacob that Laban's daughter Rachel was approaching. Now, Jacob also knew that he had to marry one of Laban's daughters, Genesis 28:2. So he was more than willing to show kindness and perhaps his strength to Laban's daughter, Rachel. The shepherd boys waited for someone to remove the stone, and Jacob did it in Rachel's presence. Now Laban showed great hospitality, not only because of custom, but also because Jacob was his nephew. Laban knew that Jacob would inherit a significant fortune from his father Isaac, and Jacob is excited to discover that this beautiful woman named Rachel is related to him, his first cousin, because he knows that he must marry within his family. He asks her father Laban if he can marry her, and Laban agrees to let him if he will work for him for 7 years. Now this seems like a good idea to Jacob, except one tiny thing goes wrong. Jacob gets tricked by a false identity. Just like he had tricked someone by a false identity, his father and brother, Laban switched up the sisters and sent Leah into Jacob instead of Rachel. Now we can imagine how poor Jacob, Leah, and poor Rachel felt. All this was because of Laban's sin, or perhaps one should say Jacob's sin. Now the deceiver was the deceived. Because of the ancient marriage practices in place at the time, and the fact that consummation happened at night, a time before electricity, Jacob doesn't discover the deception until after it had been consummated in the marriage. Now there's no turning back. Like the blessing that he had received in another strange turn of events, Jacob bargains for a second wife and another 7 years of labor. Now he's not keen on being tricked, and it didn't work out well for Leah either. But God has a special affinity for the overlooked. He's generous and attentive to Leah, even when Jacob isn't. She becomes pregnant with 4 sons. Now the name she gives them signals how much striving is in her heart and how much she wants to be loved by Jacob. But by the time we read the 4th son, it seems like she's beginning to learn that God is enough. The 4th son's name means praise. Significantly, Laban's deception towards Jacob was similar to the deception Jacob put upon his father, Isaac, and his brother Esau. This is an example of Jacob reaping what he had sown. Jacob exchanged the younger for the older. Laban exchanged the older for the younger. Now when Jacob deceives his father and cheated his brother, God did not change his plan to choose Jacob to receive the birthright. Instead, God took Jacob to the school of difficult experiences to discipline him. This shows that our disobedience may not derail God's plan for our lives, but it will greatly affect how we experience it. For example, one might spend 20 years working for someone like Laban while God teaches him a few new things. Now, though we can see this was God's correction upon Jacob, it in no way justifies Laban's deception. The fact that God does work all things together for good never excuses the evil things man does. That's it for today. Thank you for following along. I hope you're enjoying these recaps. Have a great day and God bless. Thank you.